Well, good evening, everyone. Know everyone was expecting to tune in for questions and answers tonight, but don't worry, we'll get to that in just a moment. Jim and Kevin and I wanted to take just a moment to tell you all that we miss you greatly, and we're really looking forward to the time that we're able to get back together and worship with one another. If you listen to Governor Ivey's presentation on Tuesday, where she issued a safer at home order, you know that we're still prevented from meeting together. Our groups greater than 10 are prevented from meeting together. And so, of course, that just prevents us from being able to gather together and worship. We're monitoring the situation closely, and we want to get back together just as soon as we can. But we just don't know when that will be. Probably best guess will be at least the middle of May, or maybe the end of May before we're able to gather back together, but we'll continue to watch it very closely. Want everyone to be safe. We also would like to mention that it's been a great encouragement to see how everyone has chipped in together to help one another out. Every week we hear stories of where someone has helped one another. We know people are checking on one another, and that's just part of one of the things that we talked about we wanted to accomplish this year, of being the church. And it's been such a great encouragement to see everyone working together to do that, and we would encourage you to continue to do that. If you see where someone has a need that you're not able to take care of, let us know, and we'll find someone that can help take care of that. Before we get into questions and answers, we'd like to have a brief prayer with you, and then we'll turn it over to Drew. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we're so grateful to you for all that you do for us. We're thankful, Father, for the congregation that meets here at Ashville Road, and for each member that contributes to the work here. We pray, Father, that you'll bless us, keep us safe through this time of dealing with the virus. We pray that each one of us would be safe and come through this without any issues at all. Father, we're so thankful that Kevin has been able to get better and that he's back with us. We pray that you'll continue to be with him and help him in his recovery as well. Father, we pray that we can be good examples through this time, that we would be good examples to one another and encourage one another, that we would be good examples to our friends and neighbors and those we come in contact with. We pray, Father, that our light will shine in the community during this time. Forgive us when we do wrong, Father, and help us to always try to do what's right in your sight. These things we pray in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you, guys. We're going to take a minute to transition here. Studio's a little crowded this evening, but I really appreciate your leadership and coming out tonight and doing what you can to lead us and help us through this situation. They've been very busy, as all of us have been, in trying to keep up with things and keep their eye on the news and know what we need to do and when we need to open up, and it's good to know that they're on top of this. So let's continue to pray for our elders, that they will be able to help us and have the wisdom to know when to open back up and how to do that. I've often said that the decision to close services compared to the decision to open them back up we're going to look back on that and say that was easy. I think opening back up is going to be the harder question for us to solve. And so much can change. But that's enough of that. Let's get into questions and answers. And I don't know if I want to do this, Patrick. We're going to try something new. Questions and answers is not new. We have a tradition of doing that at Ashville Road every fourth Sunday night. And we've missed that. I think it's been since the end of February that we've had one of those. And we thought maybe it'd be a good idea to try this on Facebook Live and on YouTube Live. So we're going to do it. We have a few questions that were turned in ahead of time, and those will get us warmed up. But there are many ways that you can turn questions in live. And one of them is that old Q&A phone number that a lot of you use during services to text your questions in. You can text those questions to 205-440-2247, which I think, Patrick, is on one of the Facebook posts or something like that.
I'm trying to look at it now, though. Does that say 2447 or 2247 on the screen? Okay, so there's a typo on the screen.
Yeah, okay,
Don't
here it
text
is,
that
folks.
Number.
205-440-2247. 2247. Hey, maybe they won't get it right and we won't have that many questions tonight. Also,
fixed.
you can just, if you're watching on Facebook Live, you can text your questions in on the Facebook comments. And you can also, Patrick said, but he's gone now, Patrick said that he will keep an eye on the YouTube comments as well, so you can do it that way. And I think those are all the ways to do it. So let me introduce my partner to you this evening. Patrick is going to be monitoring all these ways that you can ask your questions, and he's going to be delivering the questions to me tonight. So without further ado, Patrick, what's our first question for this evening?
Yeah, so our first question is, are you ready for this? You look ready.
I guess so.
You know, I was thinking about this on my way up here. I've put these microphones on a lot of people over the years. I don't think I've ever put one on me.
Yeah, I don't think so. This is a first.
So, what is the month of Ziv?
The month of Ziv. As most of you know, the Jewish calendar is different from the calendar we use, which is traditionally called the Gregorian calendar. That's what we've been doing for as long as any of us have been alive. And so these Jewish months come up when we're reading through our Old Testaments, and we wonder, what month is that? The month of Ziv is one of those. It was the second month on the Jewish calendar. And another confusing thing about the month of Ziv is that after the Babylonian captivity, they changed the name of it. It changed from the Hebrew word Ziv to Iyar, which I think is a word of Babylonian origin. But the original name for that month, the second month on the Hebrew calendar, is Ziv, which means something like light or glow. And maybe it had to do with the time of the year, because it usually falls somewhere between April and June. And I looked it up. We are currently in the Jewish month of Ziv, which is interesting. It's the second month, and some of you may think, well, how are we in it if it's the second month on the Jewish calendar? The Jewish calendar starts with the month of Nisan, which is March, April, depending on where it falls. And then you have Ziv, which is now called Iyar. And I'm sure I'm not saying any of those words correctly, but that's the month of Ziv.
You're definitely saying them better than I could ever hope to pronounce.
I'm not using the back of my throat or rolling an R, which seems to be what you do when you say a foreign language.
All right, question number 2. I'm going to try to keep up with the number of questions you answer.
Okay, good luck with that. Let's see.
In Isaiah 11, 6 through 9, are there any other references, let me rephrase that, are there any other references to Isaiah 11, 6 through 9 in the Bible?
Okay. Yes and no. Isaiah 11, 6 through 9 is one of those messianic kingdom prophecies. Okay, let's read it. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the young goat, and the calf and the lion and the fattened calf together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox, the nursing child shall play over the hole of the cobra, and the weaned child shall put his hand on the adder's den. They shall not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. So what is this business and prophecy about wolves lying down with lambs and leopards with young goats? And do these animals even live in the same area? And obviously this is symbolic language, and the basic, if you just look at it and you take away all the artwork that you've seen, and you take away all the speculative preaching that maybe you've heard on this before, what you come down with is this picture of amazing peace. I mean, wolves making friends with lambs, and lions making friends with goats, and leopards and cows playing together. You know, that's an amazing picture. If these animals can get together, then peace is possible. And if the question is asking if there are any other references to this, one way you can say these particular images are not used in this way in any other place, but the imagery of peace is something that you see throughout the Old and New Testaments, and especially in Isaiah. Another place where this is pictured well in Isaiah is in Isaiah chapter 2, which is a very well-known Messianic kingdom prophecy that pinpoints the location of the establishment of the church to be in the city of Jerusalem. So it's a very important prophecy, and it ends saying, "They shall beat their swords into plowshares," this is verse 4, "and their spears into pruning hooks." So they're beating weapons into farming equipment. And the whole idea is no more war. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore, or study war anymore, as the old folk song says. So, you know, here you have the same idea put forth in different images, beating weapons into farming equipment. But it's the same idea, and it's all centered around the Messiah, who's described in Isaiah as the Prince of Peace. That's Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. Isaiah was a very important prophecy to Jesus. You might recall in Luke chapter 4, when he goes to his hometown synagogue in Nazareth, and he asks for the scroll of Isaiah, and he opens it up to Isaiah 61 and reads verses 1 and 2, which are also peaceful passages, and he says, "Today this prophecy is being fulfilled in your midst." Jesus saw himself as the fulfillment of the servant or the Messiah figure in the book of Isaiah. And that's very appropriate when you look at these passages on peace, because he made peace by the blood of his cross. That's Colossians chapter 1, verse 20. He reconciled us to God, which is an act of peace. A lot of people will look at these passages, by the way, in Isaiah 11 and point to some millennial kingdom situation where lions will literally lie down with lambs and leopards with goats. That's the wrong way to read it. This is figurative, prophetic language that is meant to portray this kingdom of peace, of which all of us are a part. And I can just think of so many other passages like, "Blessed are the peacemakers," that go along with this. But we need to answer more than just two questions tonight, so I'll
I think
turn
you
it back over to
answered
you.
the other two parts of that. Is it literal or metaphorical? So
Metaphorical.
And then
So we count that as question 3?
Sure.
Okay.
And then does it reference Jesus' 1,000-year reign on earth before the final judgment?
No, I can say a little more about that. The 1,000-year reign of Jesus is mentioned only in one passage, Revelation chapter 20. If you, I counted one time, Revelation 20 has 15 verses and at least 20 symbols. And the book of Revelation, of course, is full of symbols. And we have to ask ourselves, when we read these things, are we going to read it literally or figuratively? The book of Revelation is obviously full of figures, full of symbols. And, you know, for some reason, people have decided that the 1,000-year reign has to be a literal reign. And that to do that, you have to take it out of context. There are a lot of numbers in the book of Revelation, a lot of them related to 10 and multiples of 10, and they're figures that describe completeness. And so what we're reading about is a complete reign, and just to move quickly through that, which I know it's already too late to do that, we're in that reign now. Jesus reigns victorious at the right hand of God. We're in a spiritual reign of Christ. His kingdom has been established, and we don't need to wait for the 1,000-year reign. So no, Isaiah 11 isn't waiting on that reign, but it describes that reign in different terms. Whereas in Revelation 20, the reign is described as a 1,000-year reign. In Isaiah 11, it's described as a place of peace where lions and lambs and leopards and goats dwell together in harmony.
That was question 4. We're going to count that
Okay.
one as 4.
Good.
All right, we're on to question 5. Moving right along. In the song "Kneel at the Cross," we sing in verse 2, "Harm cannot befall those who are anchored there." Is
Okay.
that entirely true?
No, but we always know that songs take poetic license and are driving at one particular point. And you always ask yourself when you're reading a poem or a prophecy like we were a minute ago, what's the point of analogy? You should do that also when you're reading the parables of Christ. What's the point of analogy in Kneel at the Cross? Is it supposed to tell us as we're singing it to one another that nobody's ever going to suffer or go through trials if they're a Christian? No. It means ultimate harm will not hurt those who are anchored at the cross. The cross is an anchor. The cross will keep us from ultimate harm, from condemnation, from eternal punishment. And there is always hope. There is always light at the end of the tunnel for those who are anchored at the cross. I think that's the way that we should read that.
Cool. Next question. Was John the Baptist in error in accordance with the law of Moses when he ate locusts, winged insect, and wore camel skin, the skin of a hooved animal?
Okay. No, he wasn't in error. I think he was in accordance with the law of Moses. I'm going to go over to Leviticus 11 where the dietary restrictions are found. And about verse 20, he gets into these winged insects. And it does begin saying all winged insects that go on all fours, which I think a locust has 6 legs. All fours, I'm not going to try to guess what bugs have 4 legs, but they are detestable to you. Yet among the winged insects that go on all fours, you may eat those that have jointed legs. That's the key point there, that have jointed legs above their feet with which to hop on the ground. So the hopping insects were edible and were legal to eat. And he even says, verse 22, of them you may eat the locust of any kind, the bald locust of any kind, the cricket, the grasshopper. So there are some insects that are off limits. Many of you will be relieved to know you may eat locusts, okay? They were actually eaten quite a bit by those who were poor in Palestine during the days of John the Baptist, but it was looked upon, and I think that detail is in Matthew chapter 3 to kind of give you a little bit about the character of John and how he lived in the wilderness, and he just lived off of the bare essentials. He did not have a lavish lifestyle or get rich off of being a practitioner of religion. The coat also was a sign of that. The coat, I think it's Zechariah 13 or maybe 11, but one of those tells us that, the hairy cloak was a clear indication of a prophet. It was the garb that Elijah wore. In 2 Kings chapter 1, Elijah wore a hairy cloak with a leather belt, which is how John's described. And a very important point to that is in Malachi chapter 4, verse 5, it is predicted that Elijah would come and then would come the Lord, Yahweh, and this Elijah figure would pave the way for him. So if John came in the spirit of Elijah in fulfillment of that prophecy, that means Jesus was the Son of God. He was the Messiah everybody was expecting. Was it against the law of Moses for him to wear the hide of an animal that had hooves? Of course not. You could wear leather, which was the hide of an animal that had hooves. I think maybe the person asking the question was thinking about the fact that you were not allowed to eat camels. But not being able to eat camels is a different thing than being allowed to wear them. I think you could wear them. And the camel's hair came in 2 kinds. There was a fine hair, which was worn by people that had means, and then the tougher, coarser hair of the camel was often made for garments for the poor. So again, that's another indication that John was just living off the land, having very little money. He wasn't in it for the money, and he
Right.
was a prophet. That's what those details are there for.
It is a little bit of a shame that they didn't have like chocolate-covered insects.
I know. That would have been a
Back
revolution
when, right.
back then.
All right, moving right
Good
along.
point.
Was Abimelech chosen by God to be a judge of Israel in Judges 9? He gained the position through schemes and murder, and he seemed to want more of a king position.
Yeah, I'm wincing because Tim is in here. And Tim taught us the Judges. And I loved Tim. And he taught us Abimelech. But Abimelech was not a judge of Israel. He was an illegitimate king. He was one of the sons of Gideon. And in Judges 9, he thought, all of the sons of Gideon. I think one named Joash survived and made himself king, and it was a time of bloodshed and civil war before the next judge took over. Abimelech was not a legitimate judge of Israel.
All right, that's a...
Sorry, Tim. We can still sing the song. I mean, just know.
All right, from a little one, were there dinosaurs on the ark?
Well, I don't know if dinosaurs had not yet become extinct by Noah's day. Yes, there were dinosaurs. Now, you have to realize that all indications are that Noah took one of every family of animals, not necessarily one of every species of animals. And so, take for example a dog. I don't think that he had, we have breeds of dogs today that didn't exist then. I don't think he had a Doberman Pinscher and a poodle, and I don't know dogs, a bloodhound. I don't think that he had all these different kinds of cats, like a Siamese cat and a Cheshire cat. Is that Alice in Wonderland?
I'm thinking of Labradoodles.
Labradoodles.
Yeah.
No Labradoodles. My apologies to Malachi on that one. No Labradoodles on the ark. Probably just a dog prototype. And his genetic material would be rich enough to supply all the breeds of dogs we see today. That's not talking about evolution. It might be like a microevolution situation, or adaptation as we usually call it, but not macroevolution that jumps families, like a dog gives birth to a cat or a monkey gives birth to a man or something like that. I know the question is about dinosaurs, but hopefully that helps you in your imagination know that it did not require, if dinosaurs existed, Noah didn't have to put every species of dinosaur on the ark to preserve them through the flood. It could have been, every kind of family of dinosaur. The language allows for that kind of broad interpretation. So
Just no
that's
way to
what
know
I
for
imagine.
sure.
No way to know for sure,
Right.
which might have been the best answer to the question.
All right. Next question. In 1 Kings 1, 1 through 3, a young woman is sought to keep King David warm. Why was there a need for this, considering David's multiple wives?
That's, I read that detail the other day. It came up in our Bible reading, and I can only interpret it according to my subjective interpretation. So I think that David had some problems when it came to women. And I think that his son Solomon had a lot of problems when it came to women. And I think we're seeing here a glimpse of situations that are not quite ideal. Instead of getting him a blanket, they got a woman to keep him warm when he was a very old man. So I don't think he had the kind of relationship with his wife or wives that a man should have. And, God overlooked a lot of things in the times of ignorance, Acts chapter 17, verse 30, that he will not overlook now. So we go to David to learn a lot of lessons, but if we want to learn how to have a good marriage, don't go to the life of David. There are a lot of problems in that regard. And it was his son's downfall. And you wonder, where did Solomon learn to be a husband? He probably got that from his dad. And he was a miserable failure at being a husband and having a good family. David's family was full of strife. His sons were killing one another. And that continued on into 1 Kings. So I don't think that's an approved example when we see that.
Sure.
It's a strange detail in there, and I'm troubled by it, but I don't really know what to make of it.
That might be another one of those we just don't know.
Yes,
I mean,
we could clear out a lot of questions
Right,
with that
we just don't
answer
know.
tonight.
All right, next one. How much power does God show today compared to what he showed, it says, back then? So I'm assuming Bible times.
The exact same amount of power, okay? Now, I know what the question's getting at. The question is asking, about miracles, as if miracles show more power than natural law. But what's more powerful than a planet in orbit around the sun? What's more powerful than a flood? What's more powerful than photosynthesis? What's more powerful than birth? These things are amazing, but we're used to them. But just because of frequency, that doesn't make them any less powerful. A miracle, I don't believe, takes any more power than the sun coming up, which I know it doesn't literally come up. We rotate around the sun. But I don't think gravity is any less powerful than Jesus walking on the water in defiance of gravity. So I think the power is consistent regardless of the time, back then or now.
I think that's a good way to answer that one.
Okay, thanks. That's the first time Patrick told me that tonight.
Did man have a conscience before sin entered the world? And by conscience, I think they mean the ability to discern right and wrong.
Okay. I believe so, because I tie the conscience into, and let's understand, I think most our viewers understand this, there's the consciousness, being conscious, which is having awareness, and then there's the conscience, which is that, like you defined it, that urge to do what is right, that feeling of guilt after you do something wrong. And I believe all of that, both the consciousness and the conscience, is tied into being made in the image of God. Now, there may be some things that were different, but I believe that the conscience was there because we were made in God's image from day one. And that's the only passage, I'm talking about in Genesis 1, 26 and 27, the only passage that sheds any light on that question to me. So I have to say yes based on that.
All right, next one. In heaven, will we be fighting a literal war against Satan or our own battles in our hearts?
We will not be fighting wars against Satan in heaven. That war, in many ways, has already been won. Hebrews 2, 14 and 15, the passage we talked about Sunday morning, says that Christ destroyed the one who had the power of death. Now, his influence is still allowed on earth, and so there's still a spiritual battle in which we are engaged. But you go over to Revelation chapter 12 and you see a war between Michael and his archangels and the devil and his angels. And you say, well, this is in Revelation, so this is happening in heaven. It's not happening in heaven. It's a sign of what happens before heaven to let us know how it's going to turn out and that there will be a heaven. And it shows that overwhelmingly, I think before the battle's even fought, it's won. I'm reading Revelation 12, verses 7 and following. War arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. Well, is this a future thing? Well, I believe that if you're reading this literally and you want to say, well, this is about Satan being an angel and being thrown down from heaven, that's already happened. So what this is supposed to look like is a picture of victory. The theme of the book of Revelation is victory. And you see that depicted in so many different ways, and this is just one of them. It's not depicting a battle fought in heaven for us, although I see that it's in heaven here, but this is past heaven. This is when an angel rebelled against God and lost and was cast out so as not to destroy the peace of heaven or the order that's supposed to be in heaven or the righteousness that dwells there. 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 13.
All right. I've lost count now.
Oh, anybody else?
I quit counting. We'll have to watch this back and see if we
Tim's
make
counting.
the record. You counting over there?
He's not
Tim?
going to tell us though till the end.
All right. What is a good definition or explanation of grace? For example, we are saved by grace. We offer grace. How would one explain grace with a godly definition or explanation?
That's a great question. Grace is undeserved favor, undeserved kindness. So when we apply it to God, He saves us even when we don't deserve it, Ephesians 2, 8 and 9. But your words can be gracious, Colossians 4, 6. And that just means you speak kindly to people even when they don't deserve it. You can be gracious to others, meaning being kind, not expecting anything in return. So grace throws justice out the window, so to speak, in that it shows kindness to others when it's undeserved, even favor and blessings to others. And when you look at it that way, it doesn't just apply to God, it can apply to any situation. We're to follow God's lead in being gracious people. That's how I would look at it.
In the song Give Me the Bible, how does the night vanish in eternal day?
Okay, well, we're in Revelation, so I think that is inspired by Revelation chapters 21 and 22. Look at Revelation 21, verses 24 and 25. By its light will the nations walk, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it, and its gates will never be shut by day, and there will be no night there. And then he goes on to say that the light comes from the Lamb and from God. I should have backed up to verse 23. The city has no need of sun or moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and its lamp is the Lamb. So no night in heaven. It vanishes into eternal day. That's a picture of heaven. And light, of course, is symbolic there of knowing the way, knowing the truth, no evil existing, righteousness dwelling there eternally.
All right. 1 Timothy 1:18 references some previously made prophecies. What are those prophecies?
Okay. 1 Timothy 1:18. Let's look at that. 1 Timothy 1:18. This charge I entrust to you, Timothy, my child, in accordance with the prophecies previously made about you, that by them you may wage the good warfare. Timothy had been timid about some things, and we read more about this in 2 Timothy, which I'd like to turn over as I'm trying to answer this. In 2 Timothy chapter 1, here's what Paul writes him beginning in verse 6. This reason I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God which is in you through the laying on of my hands. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. So there was some moment in Timothy's life, and there's another passage that refers to the elders laying their hands on him as well. And Paul is reminding Timothy when he becomes afraid or fearful or anxious that he has this prophetic word about him, that he's had God's approval, that he can do the job he's been commissioned to do. And we don't have the specifics of the prophecy, but it would be something like you will proclaim the word of God, you will proclaim the gospel, and you will do so with the power of God. And we're just deducing that. We don't know that exactly. We can't be certain, as you would instruct me to say on that one.
We just don't know.
We just don't know.
Just don't know.
We don't know. But there was some prophecy whenever he received a miraculous gift, maybe, or whenever he was commissioned to go out with Paul, and the elders and Paul laid their hands on him. So something in general like that.
Sure. All right. Is the first parable from when Nathan the prophet told King David the story about the poor man with only a little ewe?
Yeah, little ewe lamb. That is not the first parable. Parables go way back. I can think of an earlier example. We were talking about Abimelech. Joash, the son of Gideon, told a very interesting parable about Abimelech in Judges chapter 10, about trees, trying to get somebody to rule over them. So go back and read that sometime. I'm not going to say that was the first parable, because it's kind of hard to tell, what's officially a parable or not. There are a lot of stories and analogies that are used in the instruction of the Old Testament, especially by the prophets. But Nathan's is one of the most striking examples. There are some more obscure ones that we can go back to as well.
Sure. All right. Does Luke 17:34 support both the rapture and homosexuality? Some versions have two men.
Okay, I'm gonna say no even before we get there. So the rapture, okay, let's answer the rapture first, okay? A few weeks ago, Will and Jason were in here, and we were asking about signs of the second coming, and we talked about Matthew 24, and we talked about some of these symbols that are found in Luke chapter 17. And if you haven't seen that, you might want to go back and look at that. But in Luke 17, verse 34, just isolating the symbol out, he says, I'll tell you, in that night there will be two in one bed, one will be taken and the other left. Well, you can see my translation does not say two men, but just two, and one will be taken and the other left. So already we can see through the different translations there are various ways to read this. In the Greek language, and used to in the English language until political correctness changed things, he, him, man, men, mankind, these were all words to refer to humanity in general. And so there's a Greek word, anthropos, that unless you're given any other instruction, you should translate that as man. That is not the same word as aner, which is the word for male. But anthropos is a word that is used to refer to human beings, and that's the language used here. It's not specifying two men. And does it talk about the rapture because one is taken, one is left? The words taken and left have to do more with salvation and being lost than some imagined fantasy of a rapture, which is not described anywhere in Scripture. There's no such thing in Scripture as a secret rapture where Jesus comes without the knowledge of the wicked to raise the righteous dead only in a first resurrection, and to take the righteous living so that they don't have to live through a 7-year tribulation. That's not in Scripture. Now, you can go and piece things together, but you're going to have a lot of trouble doing that, especially the silent part of it, because one of the loudest things ever described is the second coming of Christ. Read 1 Thessalonians 4, 13 through 18. There's a lot of noise going on there. Same with 1 Corinthians 15, verses 52 and following. A lot of racket going on with the second coming of Jesus Christ. So what he's saying is, when Jesus comes back, people will just be going about their business. Some will be sleeping in their beds, and it may be in a family, a married couple is sleeping in the same bed, and one of them is saved and one of them is lost. And that's the meaning there. And it will come suddenly without warning like a thief in the night.
So just a quick check here. It looks like the King James and the New King James both use the word men.
Yeah.
Men is italicized though, so.
Okay,
What
yeah,
about that?
so that when it's italicized in your King James, New King James translation, this doesn't apply to the others that I know about. But when it's italicized in those two translations, it means it's supplied by the translators. It's not even in the original. So the word men is not even in the original text there in Luke chapter 17.
Sounds like it's not applicable at all then if the translator supplied it. All right, I'm going to stop for just a second though and tell everyone that we need some questions. We've got 10 or so minutes left, so if you've got some questions, text them to the correct number that's on the screen or make a comment on Facebook or YouTube and we will try to get those answered tonight. So next question then is, why didn't God just destroy the devil? Or why doesn't God?
Well, I mean, it's debatable what the devil is. I mean, we're never told exactly what we're talking about species before. We're never told exactly what kind of species, the devil is. Is this Homo sapiens? Is this angel? Is this beast? Is this animal? Is it a plant? We don't know. We can draw some deductions based on certain things we know about the devil. He doesn't appear to be human. He has supernatural abilities that human beings don't have. He's certainly not God because God has power over him. Although he has appeared in the form of animals like the serpent, he's obviously way too intelligent to be an animal, which leaves us with the angels. And angels are immortal, as are we. Once we're born, we are created beings and we are immortal. And he can't destroy an immortal being like an angel any more than he can destroy an immortal being like a human being, which is why we read about eternal punishment. I mean, there are ways in which the devil can be destroyed. His power can be destroyed, going back again to Hebrews 2:14 and 15. But in terms of his existence, his being, he cannot be destroyed because you're either immortal or you're not. And angels are immortal, and humans live beyond physical death as well. So that's why he didn't destroy him, because he's an immortal being as far as we can tell.
Right. All right, from a little one. If God rested on the seventh day, does that mean he worked 24 hours a day on the first 6 days? Or no, wait. Does that mean he worked 24 hours on the first 6 days? So yes.
Oh, I see. Like we have an 8-hour work day, so that God worked 24 hours a day for the first 6 days, and then finally,
Right.
Long vacation from there till now,
Right.
kind of thing.
I think that's right.
Well, the work that is referenced in Genesis 2 about the seventh day rest is it's not a cessation of work, but it is instead a change in activity. And that's how rest is described throughout the Bible. So it's not really about how long per day God worked. I mean, how long does it take someone to say, let there be light? As far as we know, the only work that he did on day one was to say, let there be light, and there was light. It doesn't take God very long to say that. Evening and morning the first day, and then second day, let there be a firmament or an expanse to separate the waters. And it was so. So these things didn't take 24 hours. Not that God lives or thinks in terms of hours and minutes. When it came to day 7, he rested. What that means is he rested from his creative activity. He stopped making new things. But more work was to be done, and that has to do more with the sustaining of the universe. We learn from passages like Colossians 1:15 and following, and Hebrews 1, verses 2 and following, that this universe has to be upheld. It has to be sustained for it to continue to exist. And I like the analogy of a dream. When you have a dream, that dream exists only in your head. And the minute you take your mind off of it, like you wake up, that dream is gone. It no longer exists. Well, all God would have to do is take his mind off of this universe for 1 minute, and it dissipates. It's gone. So there is work that continues, but it's different from creative work. And in that sense, he rests from creative work. And I'm basing that on something Jesus says in John chapter 5, verse 17, where he's being criticized for healing on the Sabbath day, because you're not supposed to do any work on the Sabbath day. And he says, my Father works until now, and I work. And he's referring to the work of sustenance, the work that brings the rain, the work that brings the sun, the work that makes the plants grow, etc. So I may have gotten away from the original question there, but there are some answers
Sure.
to it, if not the answer.
Sure. All right, we got 3 questions left. I think we have time
Okay.
for these last 3.
Sure.
If Adam and Eve could not eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, could they discern good and evil before they sinned? And this is a follow-up question to the conscience question earlier.
Okay. Well, all right. So that's a tough question. I'm going to guess that not like they could afterwards. There was something that happened, some kind of knowledge passed from that forbidden fruit to them when they ate it. They lost their innocence. They noticed they were naked and they were ashamed at that point. They formed this guilt feeling, which I know we talked about in terms of conscience, but they didn't suddenly take on that part of them that is like God, that has a conscience. They didn't suddenly begin to make decisions for themselves. They were free moral agents before that. But something changed, and it's hard for us to know exactly what it was that changed in them when they ate that fruit. But, you know, the most detail we have from it, unfortunately, is from Satan's mouth, and you can't trust anything that he says. He says you'll become like God, and he's afraid for you to eat this because he don't want you to become like him. Well, we saw after they ate it that there was nothing for God to fear from them. They were basically destroying themselves. They were not a threat to God at all. But something changed. They lost their innocence, and so in that sense, they saw good and evil through experience. Let's think about it that way, maybe. Before they ate that fruit, they'd never experienced evil, although they had a concept of it, because God planted that concept into their mind. Eating the fruit of that tree is evil. But they didn't have experience of it. They just had the intellectual knowledge of it. Then they sinned, and now they've experienced it. So there's one thing to know academically the difference between good and evil, and to know academically that if I do evil, I'm going to feel guilty about it. It's an entirely different matter, though, to commit evil and experience it and experience the guilt and, I guess, actually use your conscience in a negative way. Maybe that's the answer to the question. Sorry, it took me. Sometimes I have to warm up too.
Take all the time you need.
Answer. Yeah, especially tonight, right? We could do this all night.
All right. So lightning round. A few questions came in when I said it was the last 3 questions. So.
Oh, thanks. Thanks everybody for doing that.
Yeah.
But we talked about this. What are we going to try to do this in 5 minutes?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, we're going to do a speed round.
Speed round.
We talked about if we have too many questions, we can get them all in. So I'm going to try to answer these quickly.
All right. This is more of a statement, but maybe you can just comment on it. It seems confusing that John knew Jesus as the man and the Savior. Sometimes he seems not to know somehow. Does that bring up any
John the Baptist?
thoughts? Yes, I'm guessing.
I would classify that, along with Jesus' brothers. They grew up with him and didn't seem to know. So Jesus, didn't really start his ministry until he was 30 years old. And that's when people, even John, had to start figuring out, is this the one?
Just another guy until then, basically, to them.
Yeah, when he was 12, he was doing some pretty
That's
amazing things. But aside from that, there's not a whole lot recorded. So, I'm thinking that's kind of, John probably knew him his whole life, but I'm not answering this one very quickly, am I? He had to start watching for the signs when Jesus turned 30 and started, exposing himself as who he is.
Right. All right. Will you address the question of taking the Lord's Supper by ourselves, for those who are, during this time of isolation?
Sure. Okay, the Lord's Supper is communion. Read 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 16 and 17. It is to be taken in a gathering when we come together. And so that is the full nature of the Lord's Supper. It is a group activity, okay? Now, is it wrong to take it individually? No, it's not wrong to take it individually. Is it wrong when the whole world is sick to stay home and protect people? No. Is it wrong when you're sick to stay home? We always say the Lord understands. We've talked about that, on these live streams many times now. You're not doing anything wrong by taking something akin to the Lord's Supper at home. And participating as far as you can in the Lord's Supper at home. I don't think anybody is saying this is the way it should be. This is what the Lord planned for us. It's just a temporary measure. So I think on the one hand, some people are concerned about missing the Lord's Supper and they want to take it at home. My family and I do that with a group, a small group. But so we do that. And on the other hand, some people are not taking the Lord's Supper right now because they know the Lord's Supper is something we do when we come together. And I say they should follow their conscience in that matter as well. You're not doing anything wrong by doing it, but you're not doing anything wrong not doing it. Follow your conscience. This is one of those matters where you've got to follow your conscience on this. And I know it sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I've thought about this quite a bit. And I know of some people who conscientiously aren't taking the Lord's Supper right now because they're not with their family. And that's fine if you choose to do that. We're all working towards getting back together where we can do it the way God intended it.
All right, 2 more questions.
All right, I'm not doing them fast. I'm sorry.
That's okay. May
These
go
are
a
hard to
little,
answer
may go a little
quickly.
over on announcements later, but maybe we can.
Let's put that on a speed round.
Yeah, we'll put
See
that on
what
a speed
happens.
round, Tim. Can you explain Ecclesiastes 10, 1 through 3? Quickly.
It's going to take me a minute to turn over there. Ecclesiastes 10. Well, that's kind of deep into Ecclesiastes, isn't it? Dead flies make the perfumer's ointment give off a stench, so a little folly outweighs wisdom and honor. Well, that seems pretty clear. Foolishness just takes a little bit of foolishness to ruin a whole lot of work done towards wisdom. What do we always say? If we were writing this, we'd say, one bad apple ruins the whole bunch. A wise man's heart inclines him to do right, but a fool's heart to the left. That's not political, so please don't read that as a political statement. Even when the fool walks on the road, he lacks sense, and he says to everyone that he is a fool. Well, I think this is just a lot about the difference between wisdom and foolishness.
All right, last question. Ready for it?
I don't know. Depends on what the question is.
In Isaiah 53, verse 2, what does it mean to be a root out of the dry ground?
Well, it's a messianic symbol. There are several symbols of the Messiah as a root. And this is about the Messiah being somebody who's born as a human being and growing up from childhood. He's not, he follows that about him not having any kind of majesty or beauty about him. So he is a king, but not in the earthly sense, not in the earthly way. He is someone who unexpectedly rose to prominence. That's a major theme in Isaiah 53, which comes to the point later on where he's hanging between criminals. He's bearing the sins of many and numbered with transgressors. And so he's not the Savior, the Messiah, the King in the normal sense. but like a root out of a dry, parched land, he rose up as a humble child in humility and became our Savior. That's the meaning of that. So how many questions was that, Tim?
If we give you credit for 3 on the Isaiah 11:6.
Let's do that. Let's do the extra credit.
24 is what I came up with.
24.
We'll see if at home anyone came up with a different number, but 24
I
is what
don't think
came up
anybody
with.
was watching as closely as you. 24. That's why I feel tired right now.
Well, coincidentally, the same number of announcements I have. so this,
All right.
But we'll do them in lightning round, so that'll be it was great to see the elders up here tonight.
Yeah, it was. What an encouragement.
Yeah,
having them
it
here.
just made me feel good to see them together. Made me feel good to see Kevin. Period.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm glad they were here and had that message for us. And I know they expressed just like us that we're excited to get back together, but we're going to do it in what makes sense. And,
Yeah.
And they'll be wise in those decisions. Great job by Patrick tonight. I love seeing Patrick in front of the camera. And
Yeah.
so thanks to Jason also for producing tonight's Bible study. So.
I'm not used to Patrick not wearing pajama bottoms up here at the. I'm just kidding. He always is fully clothed when he comes to Ashville Road Studios.
But he did a great job,
Yeah.
and that was I really enjoyed just a little different twist on questions and answers. Somebody
Yeah.
to sort of bounce things off of. That was good.
Yeah.
You know, in the questions, it was good to see people are keeping up with their Bible reading, things coming out of First
Yeah.
Kings. So keep up with that. That's good. You know, I've sort of noticed in the last week, you probably have too. Seems like the world's getting frustrated, right?
Mhm.
You know, this was a new thing for a while. Then there was like new, you know, for us with kids getting adjusted to school at home.
Mhm.
Now
The
everything's
newness
sort
is
of
wearing
old,
off. Yeah.
right? And
Yes.
and that's where I think, you know, Bible study, prayer, fellowship with one another, whether it's a Zoom meeting or a phone call or a FaceTime meeting with somebody, do all of that you can. It helps us all to be together as much as we can. And it's a time when people really are, you know, you can feel the frustration in the world, and it's another opportunity for us to shine our light. And
Yeah.
but we need to be working on that ourselves, and we can help one another with that. So thank you for keeping up with your Bible reading and keeping up with one another. That's so very important during this time. Let's talk about some prayer requests for a minute. Please keep Sister Tip's family in your prayers. Know they're hurting, and we wish that we could be around them physically at this time, but certainly, you know, our hearts are with them right now. So please keep them in your prayers. Some good news about Doris Madden. Doris underwent surgery on Monday morning, went well. Didn't have to do everything that they originally thought, right?
Right.
And so that's really good news. Not sure if she's home from the hospital yet. Hope she is, but please keep Doris in your prayers as she continues to recover. A whole lot of people in the email updates, so you know, keep an eye out for that. Please continue to remember Sharon Luna's mother, Mildred Sisk. Not been doing well. Hospice is called in, so please keep Sharon and Mildred and that whole family in your prayers. Tom Greenway had to make a quick trip out to, I guess when we were here last Wednesday night, Tom's mother was in surgery, I believe. And so that surgery went well, and Tom shared that they did not find any cancer in connection with that surgery. There'll be some further surgery in a few weeks, but that's certainly great news, and we're so happy to be able to share that. Please keep Rhonda Greenway in your prayers. We've had Katie Shell, a former member here at Ashville Road, on our sick list for a while. We learned that she got an excellent report from her oncologist. If you remember, one of the last updates we provided with detail about Katie is that they had sent her home, I believe, from Texas. They had seen some spots.
Yeah.
The doctors at this point those spots in her lungs have shrunk over the last month, and the doctor now doesn't believe those are cancer. That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
great
that is
news.
wonderful news.
So they most likely those were inflammation or infection. She starts 3 weeks of radiation to her arm tomorrow. So please continue to pray for Katie, and we need to offer some prayers of thanksgiving for that great report as well. Jason Pullum's grandfather, James Welburn, has gone into the hospital with some circulatory problems, so we didn't have that for the last email update. Keep him in your prayers. Also, a friend of the Woods who has visited with us, Eunice Case. She's been diagnosed with cancer. She's decided that she's not going to undergo treatments, but please keep Eunice Case in your prayers. The Woods have asked that we try to send some cards her way, and I will be putting her address in our next email update that'll come out in the Saturday time frame. So please be on the lookout for that. While we're talking about cards, we have another opportunity. Know that a lot of you are sending cards to folks. You're keeping up with the birthdays and anniversaries and everything. But let me ask you especially if we could shower Brother Liesel with some cards. He'll be 94 on May the 10th. And, being in a facility like he's in right now, he can't have visitors. That's been happening for a while, but let's reach out to him, show our love to him with some birthday cards. His birthday's on May 10th. I think, did I put it in the email update last night?
Yes.
Okay, so that address is in the email update, and we'll keep sharing that with you along with Eunice Cases as well. Okay, I think that's the prayer list. Just a couple of other things. Keep in mind the Leads outreach opportunity. We've collected quite a bit back in the back, so we still, could use as much as you could bring in terms of those items. They're listed in the email update. Just bring them in, drop them in the bin back in the back, and we'll get them inside, and we'll get them over to Leads outreach as well. So thanks to all of you who have contributed already. It's time to talk about contribution. So this week, our contribution, $5,817.57. So we took a little dip this week.
Yeah.
That's not unusual. If anybody's ever looked at the board before, some
Right.
weeks there are natural, peaks and valleys. A lot of that has to do with how people are paid. There's a lot of things going on in the world right now, right?
Yeah,
that
and
impact.
I mean, I didn't expect it to get that high through all this, and
Right.
just the fact that it's been
phenomenal.
beyond that.
That's
is
right.
So
and
wonderful.
we've been making up ground on an exceeding budget
Yeah.
all the way through. I guess it's been 5 weeks maybe that we've been apart, and so this one's a little bit low. We'll all continue to do what we can,
Yeah.
and that's that's all we ask. We know that there's some people out there in extenuating circumstances, and we certainly understand that. But let's all do what we can to keep that number high, and let us continue to be able to do good with all of that. So if we talk about the email update all the time because we're putting so much information out there in it. I just thought about it tonight. If anybody's not getting the email update, please get in touch with me.
Yeah.
We'll,
That's our bulletin right now.
It really
That's-
is. It's our
Yeah.
way of getting detailed information. You might think, if this isn't detailed information, what is? But all the details are there. We're trying to, we're asking for pictures and things that we can share, just to have a little more feel of being together.
Yeah.
And so, send us pictures as you're worshiping. We're doing the little thing with the sermon notes that we had several submissions. So if you can, we'll put a blank version of that in the next announcements. Print that out on Sunday for your kids and let them fill that out. And we may be back together. We'll keep putting those things in the email updates and sharing the things that your kids are doing. We always like to see those things. I think that is pretty much it.
All right.
All
Well,
right.
you did a fantastic job as always.
I hope you weren't counting. That might have been 24
I didn't count.
there.
I didn't count.
But hope everybody has a great remainder of the week, and we look forward to hearing Drew's message again on Sunday.
Right. See you then.